Good afternoon. I'm John Falchicchio, Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and welcome to this week's DMPED Weekly Recovery Check-In. This week and throughout the month of June, we're actually going to be talking about our Fair Shot budget. So Mayor Bowser presented her budget at the end of May, and she was before the council just last week. So this week, we're actually going to talk with Deputy Mayor Geldhart about the public safety budget. So if you want to be part of the conversation, just use the hashtag DCHope. On Twitter, or jump in on Facebook, and you could ask questions, make comment there. So I want to turn to Director Geldhart, or Deputy Mayor, excuse me.
That's okay.
I saw the stare when I said Director instead of Deputy Mayor. So Deputy Mayor Geldhart,
absolutely fine.
who actually has served as Director in a number of agencies.
Yes, sir.
So wanted to just have you kick it off and talk to us kind of about the highlights of the budget, and then I know we've got some team members here to talk through the rest of the budget.
So there's a lot of great things to talk about in the mayor's budget for public safety. We're going to focus particularly here on the gun violence prevention side of that, because this is a new thing, and it's really a mark that the mayor has set out that far surpasses just about anywhere in the nation on an investment in the prevention of violence and prevention of gun violence in particular in our city. So we're going to focus primarily on that. Suffice it to say, though, our public safety and justice cluster really did benefit this year, as did many of the other clusters, in the fact that we've received our federal funding and the ability for us to fully fund as much as we can of the needed services that we provide, like our fire and emergency medical services, ensuring that we have good facilities for them, to be able to rehabilitate their vehicles and work on their vehicles. There's a lot of good stuff in the budget. An additional 100 officers that we're going to get through the program, where they come in as a cadet through high school, and then our homegrown officers for us here for the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as an additional 135 officers. But those are just the other sides of the budget.
But I'm going to jump in because I asked the panel today, I said, just jump in when you have a finer point that you want to put on something. So right now, just for MPD, because Mayor Bowser said that she's going to make sure that MPD has the resources it needs. Well, we're going to talk a lot about the non-police resources today. But just stick on that for one moment. So MPD, how many officers have they hired this year? How long will it take? And then you just talked about two hirings that we'll do.
Sure. So the only hiring that we did in all of 2021, the only hiring we were allowed to do through the budget process that was approved by the council and sent to the mayor, was in our cadet program, and that was for 100 cadets. So we were able to do that. We weren't able to do any other hiring. So we've had no new officers coming through the system. We've had a lot of attrition that's gone on.
And I'm going to ask you to pause there. So the cadet program, too, high school students?
High school students that come in, they commit to the program. They start to get trained as young police officers is in the training that the officers go through. And then as they matriculate through high school, then they can come back in and they have a leg up as they come into the academy and going through all of that to become police officers.
And they actually get free tuition to UDC while getting paid to go through college.
That's
to
correct.
Get their 60 credits to go to the academy.
That's
great. I won't tell you what I did for my first 60 credits, but that sounds like a much more productive way to do it. When I was at Catholic, actually I did do my work-study job, my internship, but this one, they already know that they have a job at the end of it.
That's right. And not only that, what that allows us to do, John, is put out there on the street as peace officers in our city, homegrown folks like our chief. Our chief went through that program.
Right.
And it really gives us that sense of ownership and sense of home in our police force. So it's a great opportunity for us.
And so the mayor's investment is for 100 or an additional 100?
For an additional 100. So that'd be a total of 200 for us.
Okay.
And then we have, on top of that, 135 regular police officers that we can bring through the academy. And it's 135 because that's as much as we can get through our system this year. And as the mayor has looked at this and said very clearly that we look at our statistics, we know what we need for law enforcement officers to deal with the statistics that we're seeing on our annual crime rates and all of that. And that's what we're looking to staff to, not an officer more, not an officer less. And that's really what we're doing this year. 135, we have 0 come through in 2021. 135 is what we can get through in the year.
And each year you're going to have folks who retire or maybe go to a different career or different occupation.
That's right. The attrition rate goes a lot faster than that, but yeah.
Okay. Great. So, what are you excited about beyond MPD?
So beyond what we have for fire and EMS and MPD, what we really want to talk about today, and we have here with us on the panel today, Director Harley Harper, who is our first in the city Gun Violence Prevention Office Director. We're very proud to have her here. She's already gotten started. She's already on the ground out there doing work. So Linda's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with this investment of $59 million into that front end of what I call the ecosystem, which is the prevention side of things. So Linda has a huge job, and I'm not going to take her thunder. I'll let her talk about that. But we also have next to her Director McFadden, Dell McFadden, who runs our ONES office, our Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And he's got a huge role in the city with violence interruption, running our Pathways program, and there's a lot of investment that went into that as well. And he works hand in hand with Director Harley Harper on what we're doing for prevention. And finally, last but not least at all, on the end, Director Apaya from DYRS, who also is a recipient this year of some increased funding, and also sits on that front end with us, as well as on sort of the back end of that ecosystem of our criminal justice system. But really the front end side, I think, is what we've seen some investment in this year. And Lindsay's going to talk about that today too as well.
Great. So we want to have Linda give us her update on how she's going to spend $59 million. Not spend, actually, invest. Invest $59 million.
Right. The one thing, though, before Director Harper takes on, the way we did this in this budget this year, and as we know, it takes a whole of community and a whole of city government to really do what we need to do on the prevention side. So what you see in the budget and what we're asking residents and the council and everybody to do is to see that breadth of investment across multiple agencies. Director Harley Harper, she's going to be in there quarterbacking all of that and making sure it's happening and getting where it needs to go, and we're achieving our outcomes. But it really is investment in a lot of different agencies, Department of Behavioral Health, Department of Human Services, CFSA. There's a whole bunch of agencies that I'm sure she'll go through that are getting some of this funding that are not necessarily in our clips, the whole of city government as well as the whole community that we're really looking forward to engage in through this process. So, Director,
I was listening to the radio this morning, and on WAMU, I heard you, because you were speaking about the $750,000 in grants for this year, which I know people are excited about. But at the press conference, I know the mayor was like, wait a sec. That's important, but there's $59 million. So walk us through what that $59 million entails, and then we could talk about the $750,000 too.
Yeah, it's all really exciting, right? Because it's all about investing in communities and investing in our residents that need the investment the most. So we're going to residents who we know that a very small number of residents in our communities are creating violence in our communities and making our communities unsafe. But we also know that they have a lot of unmet needs, and we know that hurt people, and this budget is a reflection of us going to meet those needs and also working in the communities that have needs that need to be met as well. On yesterday, the grants, I think that people were excited because it reflects listening to the community. The community actually knows what they want to do in their individual communities, and these grants are allowing the community to lead the effort. And so rather than the government leading the effort, the community is leading the effort, and we are supporting them. And so I think that that's what makes it exciting. And there's even a larger investment in the grants in 22, double the $750,000 that we have in the budget for 21. In terms of the overall budget for building blocks, it's just an amazing investment. These are my partners right here who together, all of us, we are working with the same population of people and targeting the same populations. And but what we know is that this is an all-hands-on-deck effort. We need everybody involved in this, and so we have all of the agencies. My sister agencies have been so supportive.
So we've got a whole slide, too. If the control room, they're listening right now, they're going to put up slide number 3, which has this whole plethora of agencies that are part of the effort. So what do they all do? How do you interact with them?
Right. So essentially, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention is not a D.C. government agency. We're a coordinating hub for gun violence prevention. So the money that you'll see on the slide is spread out across those various agencies, and each one of those agencies is using their own expertise in order to provide the prevention activities and investments that we want to see for those who most need those investments and those communities most in need as well.
And I'm going to ask the control room to put up slide 4. That's got the investments.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, you had something?
Oh, I was just going to say there is a huge effort that's going on, and Linda actually has a coordinating function that she heads up to kind of bring all that together. You want to talk a little about the EOC?
Sure.
Linda, how that kind of brings all that together so it's not just spread out everywhere and everybody kind of trying to make a phone call to get in touch with each other. You really have a good, well-functioning now entity that's really supporting in that EOC.
Absolutely. So we launched in February, and this is in the country. This is the first emergency operations center to address gun violence prevention as an emergency with a public health approach. So essentially, we have combined social service delivery with emergency management, and we are treating this like the emergency that it is in our city. And so we are taking the expertise that the district already has in our Homeland Security agency and HCMA, and they have been amazing partners with the Gun Violence Prevention Office in helping us to figure out how to manage all of this and coordinate all of the emergency management that's necessary to push things along. So since February, we've been able to detail the best and brightest from across the district agencies to be a part of the EOC, and we are using the EOC structure for command and for communication so that we are very effective in the way that we move every day in addressing the 151 blocks that have been identified as the most violent in the city.
And not to set the expectation too high, but I think Mayor Bowser said if Linda asks, make sure we fulfill that request. When that
Nobody
comes
told
to
me that. No.
Are you sure? Because we're going to go through 59 million ways that actually is the case. So I'm going to ask the control room to have that slide 4 up because I want you to walk us through what some of these mean. So the one that I was excited about was the $11 million to support returning citizens. What does that look like? How does that help?
Sure, and Director Carey is so excited. We've talked about it at length. I'm going to let the Deputy Mayor, I'm going to yield to you about those.
Okay, yeah, and we were going to have Director Carey here with us, but he's actually defending this right now in his hearing, with the council, which I think there's a lot of resounding support for. So I don't know how much defending he's actually doing rather than explaining how he's going to get it done.
Yep.
In that $11 million, we're actually leveraging our Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants to be able to work with community providers that are out there in the field working with our returning citizens every day so that we can do good assessments as folks are coming home. And the way we're looking to try to do this is get them before they come out, about a year to 2 years before a returning citizen would come home, so we can plan with them, we can understand the needs that they're going to have, so that when they do come home, we've got a good plan for them. Because as we all know, when folks come home and they come into a family and they're just now getting home and they don't have necessarily jobs set up or ways to earn money or do things, that puts a stress on a family, and that could cause more issues in families that may already be stretched. So the way we're looking at this is doing good assessments and being able to help in financial assistance for rental payments, for technology, for the many plethora of ways that folks need to be able to come back into a community and plug back in and be able to be productive, and look at reducing that recidivism rate and homeless rate for that matter, because we have a lot of our returning citizens that come home and have no place to go. So doing these assessments early on, and as soon as they get here, if we don't get them a year out, will allow us to use this funding through our community providers that know what they're doing to bring folks home the right way.
And really that, I think it was called yesterday flexible spending, flexible assistance, and it really is supposed to be that flexible, right? Because if somebody needs help with housing, they could do it. If somebody, technology, I hadn't thought of that, but if they don't have a smartphone or an iPad, for job training, or even cash assistance, even if they need cash assistance.
That's right.
So have we done this before, and what kind of, how do we put this together? How can people will people be able to access it, I guess?
Sure. So we are leveraging multiple of the community providers, and that's one thing I think Linda will probably talk about as well on our gun violence prevention side. We have a lot of folks in our community that care for our community and have been caring for our community. They know the touch points, they know the questions to ask, they know the people and the families. So working with those folks, we're going to have a very good ability to do a real good assessment, good needs assessment, and making sure we're getting the right need to the right people for the right amount of time to get them back on their feet and get them into a positive situation that can be carried forward.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, too, because there's $5.6 million for dedicated employment opportunities. So talk to us about that. Who wants to jump in on that one?
Sure. So that's one of the things that's the most exciting, because one of the number one things that we hear about from this particular population that we're seeking to address is employment. And so the district government has committed to 100 jobs, 110 jobs at the Department of Public Works. And
I like how you guys jumped in and said, no, not 100, 110.
110.
Right, exactly, because each one is important.
It really does matter, and it's really an opportunity for a career to develop into an entire career that has growing potential and opportunity with it. And so for those people who have been looking for those types of opportunities, we are hoping to be able to exchange guns to allow you to be a part of something that is going to help to be a productive member of society.
Okay, I'm not going to go down each one of these, but I'm going to jump over to youth safety and safe passage. So that's been a little bit disrupted this year because school has been different this year, but we know in the fall, everybody's going back, right?
That's right.
Right, Deputy Mayor?
That's right.
All right, great. So who wants to talk to us about the safe passage and how that's going to work with partner agencies?
Sure. I can talk to a little bit of it unless anybody else wants to jump on it.
I can jump in after.
Okay. Just really quickly, this is a program that actually has been going on for some time. This is an expansion of that to make sure that our youth, as they're on their way to and from school, have a safe way to get to school. They have safe places along the way, and that there are caring adults along the way to ensure that as our youth are going to and from school, it's as safe and as kids should feel safe on their way into where they're going to spend most of their day in school and home.
Lindsay and Dell, you want to?
Yeah. So and presently, the One's Leadership Academy at Anacostia High School, we provide safe passages. We'll be providing that in the new school year. We're expanding to 2 additional schools. We're going to Paul Charter School and H.D. Woodson. So we'll be providing, we're contracting with 2 organizations to provide safe passages for those 2 schools.
I would say one of the things that's really important about this is, I work on the juvenile side of the house, and so one of the big indicators for involvement in the juvenile justice system is truancy. We talk about it all the time, right? We need our young people in school, but for many of our young people, it's not safe for any number of reasons for them to get there. And so when we're talking about prevention of gun violence or involvement in the criminal justice system, juvenile justice system on our side, one of the things we have to address is the very real reasons why our young people aren't going to school. And certainly one of them is not being able to get there safely. And so our Credible Messenger team also participates in Safe Passage. Our Credible Messengers are, Mentoring Plus, right? So they've been working throughout the pandemic to help even our young people who eat, right? Like they usually have their meals at school. And so they've been helping even throughout the pandemic to ensure that young people are able to get to and from sites to have meals. And so continuing to make sure our kids are in school is one way for us to stop further what we say is penetration into the justice system. So
I think that we underestimate what it means when we say, we just tell all kids, go to school, go to school. We tell teenagers to go to school and not really taking the time to understand that they're very realistic obstacles that are in their way, and we have to step in and support them. We can't just tell kids to go to school if they're not safe on their way to and from school. And so Safe Passages creates that safe way for them to get to and from school.
Okay. And another one I see on here, 2 different investments, but in pathways. So there's $4.5 million for DC Pathways, and then I see $4.1 million for Pathways Champions.
Yeah, so with the Pathways, thanks for that, John. For the Pathways program, we want to duplicate what we've been doing for 3 years.
And tell us about it.
And so,
walk us through, how does somebody participate in Pathways, and what does it mean?
Okay, so Pathways is a referral process. You can be referred through CSOSA. You can be referred from MPD. You can be referred from one of our community partners. And CSOSA provides the bulk of the individuals, the maximum and high-level individuals for the Pathways program, which gives us additional levels of support from CSOSA. And we basically provide a network of wraparound services and supports for the individuals. And I'm not just saying it because I'm the director, but I feel like it's the most comprehensive program for this population because it meets individuals where they are. And I know it sounds like a slogan and a tagline, but from the janitor to the security guard, we treat each guy that comes through that door with so much respect. It's an incubator, and it's conducive to their growth where they can feel vulnerable. And I know we're going to talk about some of the mental health pieces, but a lot of our guys suffer from PTSD. And there's a mental health assessment in the beginning of the program. And what we've learned from the first cohort is that we was not prepared for the level of PTSD and mental health and trauma issues. So now we're taking that to the next level with Dr. Helen Williams and her program to support these guys. And I've never, mental health is really taboo to this population. I've never seen guys say they want therapy 2 and 3 times a week. That's just, in my 20 years of working with this population, I've never experienced that. And so that's another level of support that we'll be able to provide and duplicate the Pathways program. So the Pathways program, there's 3 phases to that program. One is 9 weeks of intense classroom supports and services. We're working on each of the milestones the individual have, but we're changing the mindset around violence and self-destructive behavior. We take them, I'm sure you saw the hearings, we take them whitewater rafting. We take them to the African American Museum. We learn about our history as a people, and there's so much that goes into that. We work with DYRS and their Credible Messenger program. So holidays, our guys are on retreats, or they're having family events in the community. So it's so much services and supports that's provided. The second phase is 6 months of subsidized employment. Mm-hmm. So after that, we have actually 8 months and a week to get individuals ready for employment. Now, employment is important, but Pathways and the One's Office really focus on recidivism, reducing that recidivism. But for those who are ready for the opportunity, after 8 months and a week, we want to provide full-time employment, gainful employment for those individuals, and that's part of that 110 employment slots. It's so important. We also work with Spin, which is a scooter company who has been supporting us with hiring Pathways guys as well, and we continue to look for additional employment opportunities for our guys. So we're going to duplicate. We're looking for another location in wards 1 through 4 to duplicate and serve an additional 100 individuals annually.
So, Del, when you say duplicate, so right now, how many Pathways participants do you have in a year?
Right now, 75. We have 3 cohorts of 25.
And you're going to what with this?
We'll be going to 200. And to date, we serve 117. And I'm happy to say, because this is normal, out of 117, we have about 43 that's gainfully employed and been working 6 months or longer. And that's really unseen with this population, but it speaks to their energy and change. They just need to see something different, and the environment has to be conducive to that growth.
Well, and Del, you mentioned we have a lot of private sector partners who tune in. So you mentioned Spin, was it? So what are the jobs that they actually made available?
Okay.
Yeah,
so Spin, they just send me an email today to hire more of our Pathways guys. So they're a scooter company. Mm-hmm. And you've seen their scooters all around the District of Columbia. So they have 2 positions. One is an engineer job where you actually pick the scooters up, provide maintenance, and then put them back into service. The other position is those trucks that you see around town. They pick the scooters up, take them to the warehouse, charge them, then put them back on the street. So those are the 2 positions that they provide to us. And just about every quarter, they send me an email and say, Del, tell your guys to fill out applications. We're ready to hire more of the Pathways participants.
And there's other scooter companies out there. There's other employers who have similar jobs.
Yes.
So reach out to you to say,
yes,
these are the opportunities.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
I want to keep going. I want to keep going. Oh, wait, actually, did you say what's a Pathways Champion?
Okay, so I left that out, right? So Pathways Champions, that is something new. We'll be moving forward with hiring 4 of our Pathways guys to work with building blocks, and they'll work for the time span of a year. And then after that time, they will matriculate into a government position in some government agency. Okay. And we did that because I think 2 cohorts back, we had some incredible Pathways ambassadors who worked with Mayor's Office of Communication, and they are now working at the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens and Mayor's Office of Communication, doing extremely well.
Great.
Yeah.
And I can speak to the Pathways Champions that we have working in building blocks right now. The excitement and the energy that they bring to the position is, and the insight that they bring to the position has just been amazing. They are so excited about their positions, and they also are spreading the word in the community. And I think that they, without even realizing it, are serving as recruiters for the next Pathways classes because that's what they represent.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I'm sorry.
Jump in, please.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Linda, because in the start of Pathways, Marcus and our chief of staff was wondering how were we going to get these guys in these seats and what would be attractive about this office to get your tier 1, tier 2, your most intensive high-risk individuals. That's no longer a problem. Unfortunately, we have a waiting list to get in Pathways, and we get calls from D.C. jail and also the prisons because individuals are telling their brothers, their friends, man, when you get out, come to the Pathways program. And so I think that speaks volume to the support and services that individuals receive at the ONE's office.
Okay. So I wanted to switch to another investment. I don't know if slide 4 is still up, but we can still go through it. And I think, Chris, before this, you were at HCMA, then DPW. So I'm going to give you this question about $6.8 million to work with DBH, DDOT, and DPW to respond to non-emergency 911 calls. So walk us through what that means.
Sure. A couple of things that we've seen is nationally. There's a national movement to look at policing in some ways in which maybe there's some things that we don't need police officers to actually do. And as we see our rates of folks that are going to be leaving the force, vice the rates that we're going to be bringing folks in, we're taking a look at this and saying, okay, so what are some of the things that we can do to offload stuff that you don't necessarily need a police officer to do? One of those that is out there is we get a lot of calls into our Office of Unified Communications for mental health calls. Folks will call in and say, there's somebody in front of my house, there's somebody in my block, there's somebody out here on the street that is creating some kind of ruckus. And when we look at those calls, if it's a nonviolent call, if it's one that doesn't involve something where you really do need a peace officer, we're looking at those and saying, okay, there's a better way to do this. And we actually have we've learned some from some of our other jurisdictions out in Washington State. They do this very well. They can take those calls at 911 and defer them. Instead of going to a police dispatch, they dispatch out the Department of Behavioral Health. Mm-hmm. So we looked at that. We started on June 1st of doing a pilot in that. So we brought in the Metropolitan Police Department, the Department of Behavioral Health, and our Office of Unified Communications to say, how do we triage the calls, to say here's ones that would be right for a behavioral health team, which has a bunch of different folks on it, to be able to respond to instead of a police officer. Here's ones that maybe we need a joint response, just in case it's starting to get heated, because it sounds like it may be that way. And then here's ones that we really do need a peace officer to respond to. So we started that whole process of how we triage the calls, how we dispatch the folks in our 22 budget. The mayor put in additional funding so that we can up the numbers of those behavioral health folks, because when you call 911, you're looking for a rapid response. I mean, that's really what you're looking for. For and able to do that, we needed to bring on additional people and some additional vehicles so that we can respond citywide to that. So we're going to do our pilot up until October 1st, get our system down right, get our processes down well, and then come October 1st, we'll get the additional resources in so that we can push this out citywide. And
those additional resources are for Department of Behavioral Health, or are those also for, so how does DDOT and DPW fit into that equation?
That's two different things where we looked at it and said, what are some other areas where we send police officers right now that probably don't need to send them? The second one in there is for just a fender bender. Okay. We have those a lot, especially on 395, 295. We see them a lot.
Oh, you see them a lot. Okay. Gotcha.
Usually not with our district residents, to pick on our friends in the state and the Commonwealth. Yeah. But no, we see that a lot. And in the city, our laws don't require there to be a police officer there to exchange information and for the motorist to move on. And actually, if you're listening to this and you do get an fender bender, please pull off to the side of the road, share information with each other, and then you can get back on the road and you can follow from there.
So is that effective now? That's in.
So this is what we're bringing on in the funding for 22 is to bring on some additional DDOT roadway operation patrol folks.
Okay. Because
sometimes people do want somebody to be there, and there may be a need for folks to be there. So when they call 911, we're going to immediately tell them if this is just a fender bender, nobody's hurt, right? It's just property damage. The vehicles will move on their own. Let's get them off the road, exchange information, you can move on. Some people say, no, I need to talk to somebody else, so we're going to defer that to a dispatch for the Department of Transportation, where they'll go down through a checklist with folks to hopefully get them on their own. If they still don't want that, then we can deploy out a roadway operation patrol to them to help them exchange information and move on.
And do those positions, does that function exist now? Or
the function exists now, but it needs to be upped. So.
Okay.
And a little bit of clarity towards it. That whole process of moving the call along through 911 over to DDOT, that's a new process.
And then I won't move on without asking about DPW, because
yes.
I know that's the last still one of your favorites.
It is absolutely still one of my favorites. 110 jobs for my people that have been coming to work, doing temporary jobs, plus our folks that are out there that do come to work. Actually, we do have a lot of our folks from whether it be Pathways or our returning citizens that come to work for DPW. You got me started at DPW.
No, it's okay.
This funding, though, here is for when we have some parking emergencies. We call them parking emergencies.
Okay.
Somebody will call 911 and say somebody's parked and blocked my driveway.
Okay.
Right now, there's not an immediacy to call to DPW to do that. There would be a police officer dispatch.
I see.
That would send a police officer to a parked car that's blocking a driveway, and then that police officer would usually then end up calling DPW anyway for a tow or whatever they needed to do, or they would ticket the car. So what we're looking at here is the same kind of rapid response, but instead of it going to a police officer, it would go to the Department of Public Works, and they could rapidly respond, a parking enforcement official out there to do the job that needs to be done.
Okay. And I don't know the answer to this question, but I'll ask anyway. So what happens, though, when they get to that person's driveway and the car's there? It's not a tow truck that shows up. There'll be a parking enforcement official that shows. And just like, throughout the city, if we can get a tow truck there, that's actually a parking enforcement official, but it also knows how to drive a tow truck. Got it.
So the ideal would be to get a tow truck there to relocate the vehicle. Mm-hmm. But if we can just get a parking enforcement official there, they can see exactly what's going on and what's needed, and then they can call back for a tow truck to come to.
Okay. I'm going to ask about this one because it is the DMPED recovery check-in. So I see, let me look at the figure, $2.2 million for temporary safe housing for residents involved in gun violence.
Sure.
Who wants to talk about that?
Sure. Dell and I can certainly talk about this together. So this is a huge need. It's something that really faces our residents, and it can be crippling when it happens. So, for example, when we have a family whose home has been shot up and impacted by gun violence, they need to move immediately for safety. And so what this temporary housing is going to do is offer us some options about where we can move people quickly and their families quickly to safety while we work out a longer-term arrangement. And so, Del, I don't know, you want to add?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's being able to have an off-ramp, if you will, to be able to place that family somewhere long enough so you can figure the situation out. We do not want them going back into the impacted community, and unfortunately, sometimes that happens. So this $2.2 million will help us to be able to support these families so that they can get the services that they need away from the impacted community.
I know you have a lot of questions to ask, but just to dig deep on this one for a second.
Absolutely.
The first week we set up the Emergency Operations Center, we had a need for a young man who had been shot, and as Dell's folks got together with the family and all that, we found out the situation. Him and his mom were living with his aunt. They had 3 young girls that were living there in the same place, and the house had been shot at 4 times. So we saw that as an immediate need, and I jumped in as a deputy mayor and said, I'm going to help Dell out and reach out to housing authority, everybody, to say we need to move this family quickly. It still took a month.
Yeah, it took maybe longer than that.
A little bit longer than that to actually move the family on, and to move the young man who was drawing the attention to the house on. So as we looked at that, Director Harley Harper said, we need a better process. So she's worked with the Department of Human Services and housing to start to have a better process, and now this will allow us to get more vouchers and more money into that program as well to make that happen much more rapidly.
Well, and I know just from being in the housing space that it takes longer than any of us would want to, and when there's that immediate need, there's got to be another solution. So this $2.2 million provides that other solution.
And it has to be another solution besides a hotel, because that's the way we have been doing it, right? And as much as we associate hotels with vacations and things like that, it's not really a conducive place to live for an extended period of time while you work out a process. So we want to have a home-like environment that allows people to be able to live comfortably while we sort through what we need to sort through for longer-term arrangements.
Well, and as we talk about sort of violence prevention, this is also intended to disrupt the cycle.
Absolutely, and housing stability is number one. If you don't have housing stability, which is something that some of us take for granted, but if you don't have housing stability, it disrupts the entire family and the entire ecosystem, and it's really it's the number one need that families have.
Okay,
I'd
go ahead.
This
Yeah.
like one of the things that maybe some of our residents don't have to think about, who don't find themselves in these positions. Speaking to those residents, is that we don't often think about the trauma that some of our families are going through, right? Like we talk about this sometimes in terms that because we sit in this space, it sounds kind of normal, but a family that has just been in a house that's been shot up 4 times, there's the immediacy of the need of housing, but also this is in investment in like trauma-informed care, right? Because getting people out of a situation in which they're essentially in some sort of limbic brain fight or flight mode, that has long-term impact as well for young people in a family or otherwise. And so when we're looking at things like long-term public health interventions, it includes things like not continuing to re-traumatize people by making them be in environments where they suffered significant trauma.
And Lindsay, I'm going to stick with you. I was going to come to you next anyway, because DYRS, I see slide 6. This is me talking to the control room. Slide 6 has on it a $700,000, and it's community grants and community mini grants. So what are those, and what's the difference?
Yeah, so those were grants that, in collaboration and partnership with BBDC and a long-term partner of DYRS's Progressive Life Center, are actually the NOFAs are up now, the Notice of Funding Availabilities. And so one of the things that we believe in very firmly in the district is that the government is not the solution to problems, but we're partners, right? Like that we partner with individuals, with our families, with our residents, with our long-term community stakeholders and investors, which include individuals who have been doing this work. But this work can include things like making sure that people have their basic needs met. The people in the community who are the grandmothers who are buying groceries and diapers and those type of basic needs that many people in our across our city just don't have, which when we're talking about sort of crime prevention generally, there are many reasons why in our space young people commit offenses, and some of it is they need basics, right? They need these things. And so uplifting and supporting as government entities, that's part of our role. We have resources. And so with the mini grants, individuals, small organizations, whoever can apply for one of these grants, it's a very easy application process. Those are $5,000 grants available now for any and all efforts that lead to a reduction in crime and violence overall. And so that our in the DRS space, we work with community organizations. That's a huge part of what we do. We believe in partnering with the community, and they are creative, and they're collaborative, and they're committed. And so this is an investment in resourcing those individuals. The larger grants, there's larger grants for small organizations, clergy, for entities that maybe have a little bit more infrastructure and can support. These are up to $50,000 grants, so those are also available. I say they're available now, but the application period will open on Monday, the 14th, June 14th. And so it's the same thing, right? Like there are so many individuals, entities, and organizations that have long been doing the work in the communities that are most affected. They're credible, which is a huge thing that we believe in, right? That we as government have to build trust, right? Like this is a relationship, right? Like we are government agencies, but it's a relationship with our residents. And so partnering with organizations and people who have relationship there and who we want to continue to grow with so that we can actually be in the work of preventing and instead of just being interventionists.
So this is a good example then, Linda, of how you and Lindsay work together. So Building Blocks DC is the umbrella, and then DRS is actually implementing.
Absolutely. In partnership with another community-based organization who's actually issued the grants. So the Progressive Life Center, a long-standing organization in the city, is the organization that's actually releasing the grants and is going to provide the technical support for those who might need it, and is also going to offer technical assistance sessions for residents and interested organizations to come and attend to make sure that they're able to understand and to help support them through the application process.
So you can see I was like starting to smile as you were saying that, because I was actually thinking of all of our grant processes in DMPED. So how do you like get an application for the $5,000 mini grant? Like, but you want to give people the flexibility. So if they have to buy groceries or diapers and help somebody in the community, so how do you get a plan or a proposal from them?
Sure.
What should people think about when they're putting these together?
Yeah, so I mean, the big thing, and one of the great things about the fact that DRS and PLC have worked together a long time, is that we've been issuing grants to maybe some entities and organizations that don't quite have the capacity for maybe applying for, like normally applying for a DC government grant, which can be a little bit arduous.
Because we'll ask you for a basic business license, clean hand certificate. And
yeah, you're going to latches, all of that good stuff. So we obviously it's important to us. We are stewards of public dollars, right? So you know, we recognize that our residents paying taxes and that's where our resources are coming from. So we're not just saying anybody can get money, right? Like that's right. It's not that kind of a situation. We definitely have a process in place where the application is, it asks a number of things, but it's simple enough, right? Where people can offer ideas and otherwise, and we have a bit of a monitoring process, right, to make sure that the funds are being used in the manner in which people have said they're going to be used.
Absolutely.
Because again, we recognize this is all public trust here, all the way around.
Yep.
And we also made sure, and it was really important to me that that the grants it was possible to apply even in a verbal application. So if there's someone who is struggling to complete the application, even though it is a simplified process, there still may be someone who has this amazing idea who is not accustomed to completing a written application, who is able to apply verbally and to describe what their project is going to be, and to be able to access the grants through that way for the mini grants.
All right. I know the mayor watches these, so I don't want to spend too much time on the 700,000,
right?
Because there's a lot in this 59.
She told us yesterday.
In the 59 million.
But apply now, though.
But yeah, exactly.
FY21.
So actually, well, where can people find it for Monday? You said, right?
Yeah. So it's on both Progressive Life Center's website, which I think is progressivelife.org, and then it's also on DRS.dc.gov under funding opportunities.
And it's also on the OCA website as well.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put it on our social media too to get it out to folks, and we'll all do that.
We're going to be blasting.
Great. And then, so Dell, Not just pathways, but there's $906,000 for those in the control room. I'm now on slide 5. $906,000 that we're highlighting to the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement. Talk to us about what some of that includes beyond just pathways.
So it includes, we talked about the $2.2 million for mental health services and supports, which will be utilized in the community, and we'll be able to expedite those services in our priority communities. So that's extremely important. We'll also be able to hire, this is a big thing, new violence interrupters. This year we provided an additional $600,000 so that our 3 contractors can hire 3 to 4 additional violent interrupters, and also community navigators. And then for next year, we'll be able to right-size our community and go into new communities with an additional 52 violence interrupters. So that's some of the things that's in that $906,000.
And I see 11 case managers, too.
Yes.
Tell me, what's violence interrupter versus case manager?
Okay, so the violence interrupter, and I think Lindsay touched on it, having a credible individual in the community who has a standing, long-term relationship with what we call Tier 1, Tier 2 individuals. These are your highest-risk individuals that's likely playing a role in violence in any specific community. So the VIs has this lasting relationship and can dial back some of the behavior or antisocial behavior in these individuals because of that relationship. A case manager is the individual that connects the Tier 1, Tier 2 individual to the services and supports. So you can have a conversation all you want with someone in the community about what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing, but if you cannot put food on the table, if you cannot pay the utilities, if you cannot assist with housing and other things, then you are likely not to be as successful as we would like to be.
So I would say one of the things about VIs, and that our credible messengers do as well, that one of the things that leads to a significant amount of violence in our community is ongoing disputes and long-term sort of simmering beefs, conflicts, feuds, yes, all of those things. And so our credible messengers, our violence interrupters, certainly assist in helping us to mediate some of those disputes, right? So that where we can, working together with the Metropolitan Police Department and, and in partnership there, that we can help to be peacemakers, right? And so that's a huge part of, obviously, gun violence prevention and intervention is the peacemaking process. And so our VIs, our credible messengers, assist in that as well.
And I also want to just add that I think, what excites me about this budget is the fact that it is exactly what the community asked for. So in my first few months in this position, I was in listening phase. And what I heard overwhelmingly was we needed some more violence interrupters. That was across the city, no matter what area we were in. And so the way that this budget reflects such an exponential growth for the one's office with violence interrupters is so critical because they actually serve as the bridge to service delivery. And so they are able to help to encourage and to help to connect people to services, and sometimes you're not willing to go on your own. You need someone to take you by the hand and to support you through it, and that's the role of the violence interrupters.
Well, and Linda, a testament to you and the work that you've already done to establish the effort in building blocks. When I was coming over here, actually, and this almost sadly, though it is a kudos to you, is that a neighbor texted me and said, we need MPD to help us put us in the Summer Crime Initiative, and how do we get to be part of building blocks? So now there's like that demand for it. So how do we meet that demand? But also, I know you're going about it in a very data-driven way.
Yes. So we have 151 focus blocks, but we also realize that we have to meet the needs of the residents citywide, and so we also have an effort that we're creating for non-focus blocks. And so Kennedy Street is a great example where they're not an actual focus block, but yet there's been extreme and intense service delivery in those blocks and working with those communities and working with those neighbors to meet the needs of Kennedy Street. And so I think that, Dell and I have specific populations that we're working with, but we also know that we're going to meet the needs of the city across the entire city.
Absolutely. So Lamont Carey is the director of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens Affairs, and we told everybody already that you weren't late, that you're at your council hearing. So if the mayor's watching, she knows why you just popped in. But we're talking about like kind of the new investments in the mayor's Fair Shop budget. And there's a slide here, slide 7, for us and for those in the control room, of course. I'm teasing the folks, our producers. But there's one in here that's Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens, $600,000, just over $600,000 for peer navigators. So talk to us about peer navigators. Does it exist now, and what will it be?
So can I tell you first why I'm excited about this budget?
Well, absolutely.
Well, I'm excited about the overall budget for a variety of reasons. It's addressing the needs of like an entire household, and why I love that the mayor, not only did she listen, but she implemented the things that the community are crying out for, and even things that the community hasn't been crying out for, and it has a personal impact on me, and why I love these two, or these three in the work that they're doing, because I was one of those juveniles, right? And they're catching the juveniles now at every stage. There's the education components that's going to do the prevention, and if those that already done and engaged in the community in criminal activity, then there's the building blocks and the pathways that's going to redirect their path, and DYRS, when they come into their facility, they're going to be able to work with them. And then there are us, those that have been incarcerated, and with these peer support navigators, we get to help them like take those steps. Currently, there are peer support navigators around the city, but there aren't any in my office. And this gives us, because now we do an assessment of an individual and refer them to the things that they say they need, whether it's behavioral health, whether it's Department of Human Services, whether it's job training or employment, but they have the option to go, right? And a lot do go, but then there are those few that these navigators going to be able to coach and encourage to follow through with the things that they said they need to be done. And that's what makes it so amazing that she's tackling the whole household.
And so I love that. And this is actually all we've been talking. That's a good place we're almost coming up on our close. Good place, because what we really want to do is make sure with all these resources out there that people know how to get to them. So I don't know, Chris, you want to jump in?
I was just going to add to what Lamont was saying, and I think the theme that you heard across the cluster here that we've been working on and that we're invested in, and that is to truly have not just the services, because a lot of these services have existed. You've heard everyone here talk about, we've been doing pathways. We're out there in DYRS. We have credible messengers that are doing the things. The violence interrupters doing their things. There's a lot of the social services that have been out there. We've had peer navigators out there. We do have supports for our returning citizens. But I think what we all recognize, and I think what Linda's honing in on and what she's doing with that Emergency Operations Center and all the agencies, is not only just bringing them together to provide it as a package, but finding those areas where people would fall through a crack. They would start along a path on a process, and then something would happen and they would fall through that crack, and then we'd lose them in the system. And really what you hear from everybody here, what they're so excited about, is the funding that we have now and the process in which we put together to do this and the leadership that's been brought to the table for it really is going to keep those cracks from opening up again. So we have that safety net for folks. Multiple layers of that throughout what you heard throughout here from the mayor's budget and the agencies that are represented here, and with Linda bringing the team together around all of that, really closing up where those cracks may be and ensuring that we don't have folks that fall through them.
And I think that's a great spot for us to end. But before I do, Deputy Mayor, you have a couple other agencies in your cluster.
Yes.
Any big highlights that you want to say from like HCMA or from OUC about initiatives that are in the Fair Shop budget?
Sure. I think for HCMA, the biggest one in HCMA really is our ability to continue to respond to and recover from the coronavirus. That's a major one. And a lot of what we've been able to build through that process and with some of the federal funding that we're getting from the American Rescue Plan really is allowing us to take those expertise and that understanding of a public health emergency and apply it here. So you see a lot of that is good for us, and it's a good process through the budget for us to be able to do that. Our Office of Unified Communications, we talked a lot about that and here in some of the areas that we're going to expand for that. And I think our Office of Justice Grants, Victim Service and Justice Grants, a lot of money flowing through that. There are a lot of services and supports that come through there, not just what we talked about here, but other kind of supports and services for victims, especially a lot of that trauma-based, behavioral therapy that we really need, the PTSD type of things, that's going to come through our Office of Victim Services. So those are some major points in there.
Great. So we're going to end here. There was a lot of information that we threw out to folks. So if you want to see what's in the budget, check out budget.dc.gov. That's the best place to go to look at the website. We have the budget books in there, but there's also, and those are really dense. But if you go to the website budget.dc.gov, you could also see some of the summaries. And sometimes when we talk off of these slides, we'll then put them up on that website. So there's some other opportunities to see what else is in the Fair Shot budget. So just want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank the folks in the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. You're the first cluster and effort to come up, yes, they said of course, to come up beyond DMPED. So I want to thank you guys for your partnership. It's so important. Mayor Bowser has talked about kind of the renaissance that the District of Columbia has experienced over the last 20 years or so, and really the two driving forces behind that are increasing public safety and then also the improvement of our schools. And so the work that you all do really affects and impacts all of us and really helps us as we think about economic recovery. So with that, thank you all for joining us. Also want to thank Tatiana Torres, who has helped us produce all of these DMPED weekly recovery check-ins. She's going to move on to a new opportunity, but she's not leaving the district. She'll still be around, and we'll still bug her about helping us on the show every now and then. But she's been behind the camera making sure that we have all that we need and corralling us all so we can present to you all each and every week. So we want to thank her for her service. So thank you, Tatiana, for that. And with that, again, check out Mayor Bowser's Fair Shot budget at budget.dc.gov. And if you put a question or a comment in the chat today on Facebook and Twitter, we'll make sure that we get back to you on the Safe DC handle. With that, thank you and stay safe.